Reputation is the emotional bond that you have with your stakeholders. It's the level of trust, admiration, and respect that people have towards you. And managing reputation is about understanding what people want from you and then delivering on those expectations.
So Kasper, thank you for joining us today on Décideurs TV.
You're welcome.
So you're an executive partner with Reputation Institute. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about your company, your practices, your customers, your services.
Yes. Well, thank you for having me. Reputation Institute is the global leader within reputation management consulting.
Mm-hmm.
And, we are founded in 1997 and operate around the world in more than 30 countries. And basically what we do is we help companies leverage their reputation in order to create business value. In today's world, reputation is really about getting the support from your key stakeholders, your customers, employees, investors, and the regulators. And reputation is emerging as a key driver of getting that support. And what we do is we help companies make the right decisions so that they can leverage reputation to win support.
Okay, thank you for this summary. So your hot news today is that you release a new version of your Global Rep Track report for 2012.
Right.
So what's in it, and what kind of insight you can give us, what kind of information you can give us about this report today?
Right. Well, why do we focus on reputation? Well, we know that companies in general have between 50 and 95% of their revenue coming from foreign markets.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that the willingness of consumers to buy and recommend a product is highly driven by the level of trust that they have towards the company.
Mm-hmm.
So we have embarked over the last 5 years on a reputation assessment, which we call the Rep Track. And the Global Rep Track 100 is the reputation of the 100 best companies
in the world,
which we then measure across 15 markets, which are the largest economies
Mm-hmm.
of the world. And we take those 100 companies and we ask the consumers around the world to give their assessment of the level of trust, admiration, respect that they have towards those companies.
Can you give us an example of the type of question that you can ask to these companies?
So reputation is based on the emotions, right? Do you
Mm-hmm.
trust? So if you take a company like Danone,
Mm-hmm.
do you trust Danone? Do you admire and respect Danone? Do you have a good feeling about Danone? And those are the reputation questions. That is the emotional, the beating heart, if you will, of the Rep Track.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are 7 dimensions that we also ask people to assess. It has to do with their product and services. Is it high quality, value for money? Innovation, are they seen as an innovative company? Workplace, do they treat their people well? Governance has to do with openness, transparency. Citizenship has to do with their role in society. And finally, leadership, which is of course the vision for the company, but also the industry. And finally, financial performance.
Okay.
So those are the 7 dimensions that drive people's willingness to recommend you as a company.
Okay. It seems that there is a gap today between what we can call HQ reputation and international reputation for global companies that go international.
Right.
So what kind of best practices and worst practices you can mention today regarding this international reputation?
Well, what we see from the results of the Rep Track 100, but also from the work we do around the world, is that exporting your reputation is proving to be extremely difficult.
Yes, of course it is. Mm-hmm.
Reputation is based on trust, admiration, respect, and it has to do with your history and your legacy as a company. So we see that companies tend to have a strong reputation in their home country because
Mm-hmm.
that's where they were from, they've been engaging with their stakeholders, and people know the history. In foreign markets, it's very difficult to build that. We see that out of the 100 companies, only 11 of them are able to build a better reputation globally than in their home country. And why is that? Well, I think there are several reasons for that. But
Mm-hmm.
the first one is to really emphasize the fact that building reputation is about engaging with your audiences, your customers, your employees, the local politicians. Many companies are looking at the foreign markets as export markets. That's
Sure.
why you sell your products.
Mm-hmm.
But selling your products is only an element of your reputation. Product and services only constitute 20% of your reputation. The remaining part comes from your operations and who you are as a company, and they have not been able to do to show that face locally, which is a key challenge when you want to export your reputation.
And if we focus on French and Spanish companies, what kind of advice or recommendation you could give to global French and Spanish companies?
It's interesting looking at the French and the Spanish companies. One thing that they have in common is that they're very strong on their product and services.
Yes.
The perception of French companies is that they deliver high quality, valuable products and services. But when it comes to the company behind those brands, people don't know. The French companies and the Spanish companies are in a situation where they are extremely strong on a core element, which is the products. They've been investing heavily behind the product brands, but where they're lacking compared to some of the foreign competitors is telling the company story. What do you stand for as a company? How are you dealing with the local communities? How are you engaging the local audiences? That is what's going to take them from what is an average to strong reputation today into the excellence.
It always comes back to storytelling, basically.
It's storytelling, but what's also important to understand is that the stories that will work in Europe are different from the stories that will work in Latin America, North America, and Asia. And the interesting piece is that looking at the French and the Spanish companies, they do have the elements in the company. They just haven't unlocked the power of that reputation in the foreign markets yet.
And in terms of unlocking the power, do you have the feeling that your customers are really leveraging social media tools like Facebook, Twitter? What's your feedback about it? Is it a good experience for the customer that use it?
I think when you think about it, and the question is what drives reputation? Right? If reputation is perception, where do people have that perception from? Well, we've identified 3 influence channels that impacts how people perceive you. The first one is direct experience. So if you have a direct experience with a company, of course, that's going to tell you whether or not you can trust this company. The second one is corporate communication. So what the company says. The third one is what other people say about you. And that, of course, is where social media has become more and more dominant. The challenge that companies have is that they're still not comfortable with the space of social media.
Sure.
What we see are the companies who really get it are the ones who are using that challenge to interact. So they're using it to actually have a direct experience. Because by interacting with your audiences using social media, you're able to actually start a conversation. And from a reputation point of view, that's the way you have to go. The trust that we have towards company communication has gone down. That means that what you communicate as a company is less trusted than if there is a dialogue between one of your employees and me as a potential customer. So I think the best practices are the companies who are really engaging in a dialogue, using the social media such as Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, whatever it is, to engage on what matters to their stakeholders and not use it for propaganda. Because when you start using the social media elements just like you would the more traditional ways, that's when you fall into the same trap, because you're now trying to push your message, and that's not what's going to drive reputation.
Thank you for this very interesting vision, Kasper, and thank you for joining us today on Décideurs TV.
You're welcome.